Okay, so this morning I was looking at my videos and someone had posted a comment on the Nietzsche's line, God is dead. And the person basically said to me that Nietzsche is pronounced Nietzsche. And in the video I had said Nietzsche. And I listened again to the video, and I guess not only did I not really notice the difference before, but I was, I guess embarrassed, and I thought, oh, geez, I gotta say something about this. And the more I thought about it, I thought it was actually maybe an interesting thing to talk about. When I was younger, I remember, I think I said this to other people before. I kind of grew up on a farm. I didn't grow up with a lot of books around me, and I didn't really grow up in an academic environment. The books are something that I discovered a little bit later in life. Certainly, in later high school, and then in college, I just became a ferocious reader. But so much of my education was self-education. I remember for the longest time being fearful of talking about the work of Epictetus because I wasn't sure how to pronounce it. And someone who I respected quite a bit had told me it's Epictetus, and I had heard people pronounce it both Epictetus and Epictetus. I think now, the more that if you go to certain sources, the more I talk to other people, I think there is agreement that it's something like Epictetus. Again, even here, there's odd pronunciation things when you talk about the French novelist, this guy who I've done a lot of work on, Saint-Exupery, and again I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that as far as you go into French. I think French has even more demanding, exacting pronunciation. I think this issue of pronunciation is really interesting. How it enters into YouTube. That a man of learning through letters and through the written word, you can you can get such a command over such a body of knowledge, and while you're doing that, you can pronounce it in your own idiosyncratic way and yet consistently do so, and it doesn't pose a problem, and no one can even notice it because the text doesn't carry the pronunciation. But when you start to speak about it on YouTube or when you're doing it live, it really does introduce different elements. There's a whole cultural heritage issue, and sort of those relations toward the language come into play, as opposed to just the academic, philosophical, or just the relations that are there in the text. How anyone who could pronounce them in their own way could read those. I think that this is so true. I think I shot an earlier video on David K. Reynolds and on his work on Morita in Naikan. And in that earlier video, I had, I think, called it Naikan. And he said, no, it's pronounced like Nikon. I mean, David K. Reynolds, the actual author, found the video and responded to me. Right, it was really fascinating. And I think maybe the general point of this video is it's about a willingness to learn and how much, I guess, vulnerability you have to tolerate if you're really going to be a learner rather than someone who either, I guess, just fearfully isn't willing to learn because you don't want to be wrong and you don't want to be caught as wrong, or there's, I guess, a kind of embarrassment that comes from having done it. I mean, I think the only embarrassment, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but I think the only embarrassment is to not be humble enough to go, look, you're either mispronouncing or misspeaking. I think the issue there of of what consequences, and I think it's important for people to try to bring that into line. And I think the same, look at someone like Sartre. If you say Sartre or Sartre, people allow both. I think, please correct me here, people, he had both German and French parents, and both of those pronunciations were acceptable. Some people say Sartre, some people say Sartre. It's very interesting the way that pronunciation plays into, I guess, the way that we think about ideas in scholarship. I look at even, my last name is a funny example. My family if you go to my family, they pronounce it Anton. Everyone calls me Corey Anton, and I come to call myself Corey Anton. And yet, if you go speak with someone from my family, they'll pronounce it Anton. And it's really interesting. It's not phonetically, or there was a word, there was a letter that was dropped, and all of this sort of stuff. At any rate, I thought it would be fun to think a little bit this morning about pronunciation, mispronunciation, identity, and learning. I guess how all those things relate. And so I appreciate the comments. And okay, very good. Thanks.